kind of have to end right at 11 because the person we'll be presenting right after is going to take the whole lot of time. It's very informal, this session. I hope a lot of you are interested in positions, but like, let me just figure out how to do this chat thing. I suck at technology, so. I have it. Oh wait. I think yeah. It's not the string. It's not the string. Yeah. It's just a part that comes like I always knew she would go into like trip with her. I just don't know extra. You saw like space and she's like back in art. He said, she was like, when this guy started shooting, she was like, can I borrow your knife? I can have a burger. It's like being a student and having taken so many classes. It feels obviously confusing. Like my still so much but my most taken plus also but that dinner has the vibes of like having dinner with a friend who you can't make eye contact.
I'm just like not talkative, not interactive, and like I feel like I'm talking to a wall. But there'll be like that one mom who like you can tell she's listening, and I just look at her the whole time. Because if not, I'll just like stall sometimes. Feel like I'm doing a really bad tour when it's not
every year. I never can. Because they're always too secret. And you'll just always find like the middle of a round that I was in the
So we're going to get started with this session. Of course, it's student election, so it's going to be a lot of like you guys nominating. So let me just explain. There's 4 positions open. You have vice president, which is the position I'm currently in. You have 4-year representative for both private and public, and then we have a 2-year representative for 2-year universities. So you can either self-nominate. If I talked to you beforehand and I was like, oh, you need another person to nominate, you can self-nominate yourself. Or if you're from the same university, you're like, you're not speaking up about this, you can nominate a friend as well. So we're going to go through each position. I'll explain a little bit of the responsibilities. It's a very, you do not have to be like heavily involved. It is very casual. It's a great opportunity with like not a lot of commitment. And then we'll take names. We'll see who's interested in what. I will ask everybody to come up here at the end for each position to just like give a 1-minute speech why you're interested in the position, what you think you can bring to it, and then I will take everybody's names, and at the closing session, at the closing session, we'll vote. We'll have a chat, she will send it to us, and we'll all vote on our phones. So, starting off with VP, you're the main liaison for all the 4 officers, or all of the 3 officers, and then also for all the schools. You help with a lot of planning, so you will be in attendance at the fall conference, which is for planning. Depending on who is running that conference, depends on how involved you are in the sessions. So the conference that I did was at Marymount, so of course I was heavily involved because I was also at my same university that I'm in attendance to. But the main thing is that you're helping plan the what the topic of the conference will be. So we did Reconnecting this year, you will help provide that next topic. And just, helping to take the information that you get and collect it to students. So do we have anybody that's interested in VP that would like to self-nominate, or would you like to nominate somebody else?
Okay, I'd like to nominate myself. I'm the only person from Embry and Henry, so I'm nominating myself.
Okay, and I know your name, so I'm putting you down right now. Any other people who would like to nominate, or also, I should preface this, that they generally do not want students from the same university to be in like 2 different, to we don't want the student representative to be from like JMU and then also the four-year public to be from JMU. So if you have like everybody going for one position, like don't have like somebody from JMU want to be president and then like 6 people from JMU want to be like public. Try to like figure that out. I said that really awfully. But anybody else interested in a VP? I see some deliberation, so I'm just like giving it a second.
Could you explain, like we walked in late, sorry,
Okay.
could you explain what we're doing?
So we're doing the elections right now. So we're going through each position. I explained that VP is main liaison. They will be in attendance for the fall conference. They will help with a lot of planning. So you'll talk to the directors. And the main thing is that depending on where the fall conference is, you may have to run a few sessions. I had to run sessions because it was at Marymount, so it was at my institution. So depending on like, but mainly it's you collect the information and you give it to the directors and to the officers of like the faculty council. Any other interest in VP? Going once? Going? Okay. So we have another nomination from Marymount. Okay, so next we're going to move on to four-year private representative. Basically, you're going to represent all the private institutions. Same thing, you'll be in attendance for the conference. That one is a less of like an outstanding position. If you can't attend the conference, it's not an issue. But we would like you to possibly be in attendance. And any interest for that position? Yes?
I'm nominating Mackenzie.
Perfect. Any other interest for the four-year private? And also, I don't know if there's any chat about that. Once? Twice? Okay. Now we're going on to four-year public. Same spiel. Any interest?
I want to nominate Angel.
Okay. I'm going to put your name down, the general name, and then you can come up and like put your last name. And what institution are you from?
Virginia State.
Virginia State, perfect. Any other interest? All right, great. And last is the two-year representative. This position is always very difficult to fill. Is there anybody from a two-year institution who's in attendance right now? I can't pull somebody into the position. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask Carly, Caroline, Mackenzie, and Angel. Mackenzie and Angel, I think by default, you guys are going to fill that position.
And in that case, I can step down so we don't have 2 from Marymount. So that way it evens everything out. You have it? Yeah, you got it.
Are you sure? You don't
Yeah,
want to
I'm
debate it
positive.
out?
No, you're good. That makes it easy.
Okay. Well then, I guess this is how it's gonna go. Because we basically have the positions in no competition. Congratulations. So, I'm gonna start with asking Carly to come up and talk about, why she wanted the position and yeah. Also, I'm sorry for putting you guys on the spot, Okay, great session, everybody. Fast, efficient.
I have a question.
Yes.
See if we still vote. We don't vote later.
I don't know if we still have to vote as a formality. I'm gonna email Joyce and be like, hey, great, we have all the positions filled. Not so great because we didn't have a high student interest. I'm not blaming y'all, but it's like, we'll see how that goes. Okay.
Yeah, so just a short little spiel. I'm from Emory and Tannery. We're a 4-year private school. So this past year, I was able to serve as the 4-year private school representative. I feel like I gained a lot from that experience. Was able to help plan this wonderful conference, and then I did attend the one in the fall as well over Zoom. I was unable to attend in person due to some health concerns with COVID. But I was so grateful I was able to come to the one in the spring, and I knew that I wanted to kind of add to to that engagement that I had this past year, get more involved with planning. I'm really hoping to bring some people from Emory and Henry next year. I'm hoping with this position I'll be able to encourage them and bring back the experiences that I had here and tell them the wonderful things that I was able to learn and grow from this. So yeah, that's a little bit about why, and I'm hoping that the next year will be great and you all will help me plan another wonderful conference.
All right, next we have for your private, Mackenzie.
Yeah, girl.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie Robbins. I'm a first-year student at Marymount University. This is my first time at the conference, and I had so much fun and loved hearing everyone's research, and I loved, showing mine off and talking all about it and educating people. I can't wait to be a part of this committee and plan it all with you guys. I love being a part of the honors program, and I wanted to be a part of something bigger, and this is a big opportunity to do that. And I can't wait for the next year to come. Thank you.
Okay, and lastly, Angel.
Hi everyone, my name is Angel. I'm a sophomore at Virginia State. This was my first kind of event like this. I've never really been to an honors conference or a conference in the college setting. So this was a really nice first event to go to, and I enjoyed meeting some of y'all, seeing your presentations. I hope to present next year or year after next year. I'm a mass comm major, and I would love to be a part of planning events and seeing what we can bring to the program in the next few years. Yeah, so nice to meet y'all.
You were great. And we could just type that out. Okay, so that does conclude the session, but before everybody leaves, you can also stay here because there will be the session after this. I did want to thank everybody for coming, and you guys have made this conference amazing. I was at the in-person conference my freshman year, which was 3 years ago, and student interest and engagement was not as great as it is this one. Everybody's been amazing. You guys have all presented research, and I've really enjoyed watching it and engaging with other students, engaging with other classes. I think that it's been just a great involvement. And so I just wanted to shout out to you guys. You've been making this great, and I hope that you guys keep on promoting this to other students in your college who have not been able to come, and just keep up with the efforts that you guys have been putting in, because this has been amazing. And I just wanted to congratulate our 3 new officers and try to hassle somebody to get that 2-year position. All right, everybody's great. You guys can leave, stay, do whatever. All right. Good job explaining your friends. Appreciate it. Very cute. Sorry, I'll forget. Cute. Yeah, I like it. Okay. Good. Awesome. Yes. Okay, cool. I was I've heard of it, but I didn't know where it was. Marymount up in Arlington. No, we're not all girls. We were 30, 40 years ago. Okay. Yeah, it's a co-ed college. We're about 60-40, so it's still predominantly.
He was walking by and I came out. He looked at me like, what are you doing here? And I was like, we just got done with elections. He goes, Julian? And I was like, I didn't. He goes, And I was like, and Courtney's really not here. I'm not here. He doesn't. Well, you
Oh my gosh, good job, you guys. Psychology, so that's why I'm like, good job. We need people like you in the world. There's people like me who don't have any clue about any of that.
I could Snapchat it.
Nice to meet you. My name's Noemi. Sorry. You? Nice to meet you. Joy. Nice to meet you guys. And is this your first time?
But he said I graded
My,
you.
I,
I was like,
first time in person. I came last year, but it was online.
Everything
Everything online. That was great.
And I was like,
We had to cover them for some.
Did you present anything, or were you just here?
the look on his face said that.
And did you present already?
He can like have fun with it. Like it's not like he's so crazy about it. But he dresses up.
Yeah.
So it's two presentations. So now you guys can come next year and present your research. Bring more people, yeah. I know. I feel like it's hard to get.
I'm telling her.
Like I feel like this is a good turnout, especially after COVID, and then after that, it's like.
I know. I'm going to. But I'm going to national conference, but it's already
Why not?
close to February.
Projects. I learned so much.
I will believe. And maybe the Southeast.
And what is? Do you guys have an honors college or is it a program? Okay. Okay. So is it? Do you have your own curriculum separate from like?
Is there anything you want?
Like an
Okay.
where it's like one side of the dorm and one of the rooms downstairs. Kind of like a living room.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a lot of stuff.
Okay.
So this one.
Yeah, ours is not a college. It's just a program. We take like they're not supplemental courses, but like you take honors English 101 instead of like regular English 101. So that's like how ours is. And then our research projects.
So it's like 20% school time.
Marymount. Sorry, yeah. Marymount. So we're up in Arlington, right outside. Yeah, it was about 3. It wasn't bad. It was all on like one highway. So then if you ride, you guys drive here all together. Unfortunately, I'm graduating soon.
Yeah, it's not a real club.
I don't think we have. Where are you going?
I am graduating and then I'm moving to Monterey, California. I'm gonna go to graduate school.
Because I think a lot of
Studying.
I would help does not have any honors.
Yeah.
writing about
Thank you. I know. Everybody's. I'm just so ready for the warm weather.
I'll have
ready.
the first
It's
Jan.
gonna be so different.
I'll have
East Coast to West Coast. And I was like, yeah, I know. It's gonna be like culture shock over there.
although I probably
One,
will be
the
taking
honors, like our honors college one.
And what are you studying?
I need one
Yeah, the
more.
middle.
Okay.
I don't know about the.
So I have to take a whole other class.
Nice to meet you all.
My one more class. I did that with global education and I took a computer science.
Am I good? Okay.
At lunch, when we're walking to lunch, because after faculty, we need to find where we walk over for lunch, and all stay served. Do honors council representatives get course? And if they don't, can anybody who's worked for the honors done in positions besides just being an honor student get one? By JC that. I just need to ask.
And I found them, and they were my size. They just need some care, and I haven't had time to like take care of them.
Okay, it's 11 o'clock and we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Bev Reed and I'm the Executive Director of Career Development here at the University of Lynchburg. And I see you guys are kind of sitting in groups. Are you kind of sitting with your schools? Sort of, maybe, kind of? What school is this over here, this group? Oh, yeah. All right. You're wearing blue. What happened to the red? Like, glad today. Okay, what group is this? Bluefield. All right. Wow, you guys had to come a long way. Did you have snow today back home?
Yes.
I heard about that. That's great. What about you guys in here? Radford. All right. Are you with them too?
No, I'm singular all by myself.
And
Emory and Henry College.
you're Emory and Henry. Snow back home too, probably. Yeah. What about you right here?
Virginia State University.
Virginia State. All right. Okay. What about you guys?
We're also Lynchburg.
You're also.
I don't know why we didn't sit with you guys. I'm sorry.
No, it's really sad. Just kidding. What about you back there?
We're Mary Washington.
Mary Washington.
VCU.
VCU.
Marymount.
Marymount. Okay, so wow, got them from all over the state. That's amazing. Okay, so how many freshmen in the room? Maybe freshmen? Okay, good, excellent. Sophomores? Sophomores, okay. Juniors? Ooh, juniors. And seniors. Okay, got some seniors. All right. And the other thing I'm noticing is so few masks. It's so nice to do something without a mask, unless you choose to put a mask on these days. So I'm happy to be standing up here without a mask on, because when we lecture in classes and when I have students in my office, we're still wearing masks. I was asked to talk about two seemingly really different things today, but they're really intertwined, and there's something that really have to do with all 4 years of your college. And so we're going to talk about today what employers and grad schools want, which includes the NACE Career Readiness Competencies, and I'll explain what that is, as well as some information on personal statements for those of you who are planning on going to grad school. How many planning maybe down the road to go to grad school? Maybe not immediately, but most of you. Okay, very good. So this will be relevant, hopefully, for you as we move forward. Okay, so, what is NACE and why do they care? So NACE is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. Their membership is made up of people like me that are from career centers, as well as recruiters that work for employers. So they're the ones who come on college campuses at job fairs and interview students and all that for jobs that they may have coming up, and internships as well. The other part of that is that these employers include colleges and universities. So they also include people who might be hiring graduate students or teaching assistants or all that. So all of this is kind of tied in together. NACE, a few years ago, started putting out a survey yearly, and it basically asked their employer members, what is it that you need students to have, to be ready for, to be able to do when they graduate? And so these became the NACE Career Readiness Competencies, sometimes called the NACE 8. So how many of you guys have ever heard of the NACE competencies before? Okay. I will tell you guys, especially I know for sure the ones from Lynchburg are probably being evaluated on them and they don't even know it. So like how many of you guys, or just across the board, have ever worked in residence life or student activities or been a leader in a group on campus? Yeah. How about been a student worker on campus? How about ever done an internship? Anybody? All of those, or the evaluations actually include the NACE competencies. Now, it doesn't call them by name. You don't see it say, oh, the NACE competencies, here they are, generally. But those are the things that you're being evaluated on. And so what we're going to talk about, what are they, and how can you talk about them? How are they part of kind of what you do every day? Okay. So once NACE got these, they sent them out to colleges and universities, and they've been doing it for years, but probably about 4 years ago, they got super serious about it. And they're like, you know, you really need to know, and your students really need to know, and faculty really need to know that these things exist. So that's when we got really interested in the NACE 8 competencies. Okay, so here they are, and you'll see that they include career and self-development, and I'll explain what each one of these are individually later. Leadership, communication, professionalism, critical thinking, teamwork, equity and inclusion, and technology. So all these are the 8 things that they identified as needing the most. Employers identified as needing the most. Okay. So the first one we're going to talk about is career and self-development. This one is near and dear to my heart as the Executive Director of Career Development. But basically, it's when you kind of are able to identify what your career is, what you need in order to navigate your career, what are your strengths, what network do you need to build in order to meet your career needs. So all of that is the thing I think that scares students the most. When I see students and they talk to me about the future, and it's like this scary, scary place, it's usually because they're not absolutely 100% sure what they want to do with their life. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's not your whole life. How many careers, not jobs, but careers, do you think that most people in this generation, so your people that are graduating from college right now, that group, how many careers in a lifetime? Shout it out. 5? Okay. 3? 10. Ooh, getting closer. Yeah, it's actually 9 to 11. Yeah. 9 to 11 careers in a lifetime. That's not jobs. That's careers. That means you're shifting 9 to 11 times in your lifetime. And a lot of that is driven by technology, which is another one of the competencies we're going to talk about in a little while. But what do you think is probably the top 2 that people stay in pretty much all their life once they get into it? Like maybe that's their one and only career. Say it again? Teaching. That is one of them, absolutely. What do you think the other one is? Medical field, absolutely. I think that most people have a pretty good idea whether they want to teach when they go into it, because what is the one occupation that you have observed more times in your life than any other one? Obviously, you've been since kindergarten all the way through college. You've been observing different types of teaching. So you have a pretty good idea whether this is, yes, something I could do, or no way, never. And then the medical field, I think there's so many years that you build towards that career. Once you're in it, you're going to stay in it in some way. It may shift from time to time, and careers do, but probably not a major career change. So for anybody who's not doing education and not doing the medical field, it's a good thing. It's okay, because as your life moves on, you can choose. You can move on to something different. And like I said, a lot of it's going to be driven by technology. So what are some of the sample kind of behaviors that you need to know in order to have this competency? So one is to just know what your strengths and weaknesses are. So if you're in an interview and somebody says, hey, what are your strengths? You're able to say that. If they ask what your weaknesses are, you're able to say that. You know what you need to do to pursue the career that your first career that you're aiming towards, and you're able to identify some of those things that you need to do to grow. You're able to develop plans for your career. you're able to advocate for yourself, and that's so important. Students don't even realize sometimes that they're advocating for themselves, but I think this honors group is probably a little more self-aware and probably more likely to stand up and advocate for yourself. If you know that you need to do an internship, whether or not your advisor says do an internship, you're going to do an internship. If you know research is going to be important for your life, then you know that you need to advocate to be able to do that. Display curiosity, seek out opportunities to learn, assume duties or positions that helps one progress professionally. So that's where you're like looking for what do you have to do in order to get really good at what you want to get into, or have something that stands out for employers or graduate programs. And I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but I think voluntarily participate in further education training or other events is high on your list of things that you want to do in order to develop this. And I think what you'll find is everybody these days has to be some kind of lifelong learner, because everything's changing so quickly. When I think back to maybe my parents, who my mom is now 90, but she went to school here in the 50s. Yeah, she was May Queen. My dad was on the tennis team. But when you think about their careers, they pretty much had one career. If they'd been in the military, they might end up having two, because the military was a career and then whatever they did afterwards. But you're not going to see that these days. So you're going to see a lot of that changing. So you have to be a lifelong learner to stay up with that. Okay, so that's the first one. Oops, wrong way. Communication. Now, I think most of you realize how important it is to be able to communicate. And this is not just like written communication. This is oral communication as well. And you'll probably be surprised at what some of the things that are really kind of considered communication. Like one of them would be listening skills. Part of communicating well is being able to listen to others and ask appropriate questions and those kind of things, as well as all of the writing, and you guys have done a ton of it in your careers here as students. But also being able to ask questions when you need to. That's really important to employers, that you know what kind of questions to ask and what's appropriate and what's not. And that's all part of that big communication thing. How many of you have worked, and I know what the answer is for Lynchburg students, tend to work in groups in your classes? Like you get put in groups a lot, right? You have group projects, and that's a great way to learn. But the other thing that really comes out of that, and I hear this all the time when we do mock interviews, is that by working in groups like that, you really hone your communication skills. If you were sitting in a classroom all day just being lectured to and you never interacted with other students, your communication skills wouldn't be half of what they are when you work in a group. I mean, every group has experienced at some point someone who didn't do what they were supposed to do, or was like lagging behind everybody else, and they're all waiting on that one person, and maybe you have to have a talk with that person. Maybe you're the leader, and you have to tell them, hey, you know, what's going on, and what can I help you with, and bring them kind of along. All of that is really important communication skills that you're honing. And then the other piece, of course, is the written communication, not just like papers that you've written in classes and that sort of thing, but being able to write something professionally, like an email. Every day, we see students who have written emails to professors, and they're written more like textees, you know, like they're texting somebody. And you probably have friends that do that to you all the time. They text you, and you're like trying to figure out what they're exactly saying. Well, you can imagine a professor sitting there trying to figure out what somebody's saying kind of in textese. It's really hard for them, and sometimes it's very offending. A lot of our students here at Lynchburg know Dr. DeClaire, and I'll never forget him. Just every time he got one, he would just forward it to me. Just forward it to me, like, okay, you're responsible for this somehow. I think that just knowing how to write professionally, whether it's a presentation that you're doing, whether it's that email, whether it's a communication that you have to include as part of a report, all that's going to be important. And so employers really often identify this is probably that top second skill. The career one was not number one, by the way. I'm not doing this in kind of that order. But communication is the number 2 skill. So we'll get to what the number 1 skill is in a minute. And I think you guys will appreciate it. So here it is, critical thinking. So critical thinking is like problem-solving skills, right? How many of you guys have to think critically in your classes? You all need to raise your hands because you know you do. If you're an honor student and you have the kinds of classes that I know that we have here with Westover, you are problem solving all of the time. And it shouldn't be something that you're just doing in the class. It should be things that are happening in real life too for you. How to think, what is a logical thing for me to do in this situation? What is relevant? What is not? All of that is going to be important. And employers say this is number 1. This is the skill that they're looking for, because we have so many people that have relied on parents or somebody else to always answer the question for them. And I have 3 daughters, and my daughters are young adults. They're out of college and everything. Still get those questions, and I'm like, I'm sure if you thought about this for 2 minutes, you would have known the answer, but somehow it's easier to ask me. And that is one of the reasons that your generation struggles with critical thinking, but you guys don't, because I know in your classes you do this every day. So this is something that employers are really, really looking for, and that that is something that they're finding lacking. So if you're able to talk about your critical thinking skills, you're right up there. That means that it's a good thing for them. Okay, next, equity and inclusion. This one used to be called like being globally aware. And then they really recognized that globally aware sounded like, okay, I'm just aware of other cultures outside of the United States and not really necessarily paying attention to what is equitable, what is inclusive in our own communities. So this has become a really, really big and important thing, and something that can get you hired and something that can get you fired. So it's really important to pay attention to what your attitude is, what you know about equity and inclusion, how you're able to engage in a way that's inclusive, and just being aware of all of that. You know, if you subscribe to racism in any form, it's going to get you fired these days. And if you can show that you do think globally, equitably, can't even talk now, inclusively, then that's something that can get you hired and get you into a graduate program. So it's all things that people are looking for, and some of the top things that you're going to see even when you're looking at like ads for internships and jobs, they're going to spell it out right there that that's important to them. Okay, leadership. How many of you guys have ever, even in high school, been a leader in a group? Okay. Yeah, a lot of our honor students are like way overbooked. One of the things they do here at University of Lynchburg that I'd never seen at any other school before is people's email addresses, their contact information at the bottom. They list every organization that they're part of. So I see like all of these. And of course I see resumes, so I know how way over involved probably our students are. But this is good. It's good that you're taking on leadership. I always tell students when they're coming in, if they're like, how many things should I get involved in? I'm like, you know, choose 3 and then get involved as a leader, and at least 1. And that's just for your typical student. I know you guys are probably more involved in that. But honing those leadership skills now is going to make a huge difference. And when you're in those groups that your professors put you in, and so you can work in groups and everything, often those leadership skills will kind of rise to the top. And they're all different kinds of leaders. But understanding what your leadership style is and being able to be a leader and you know, ask something of people and they tend to follow you and tend to do what you want them to do, and listening well. So many times that listening comes up as part of one of these competencies, which makes me happy because my background is counseling, so you know, we love listening. But that's part of being a good leader. the other piece is motivating people. So you're working with a group, whether it's a sorority or fraternity that you're in, whether it's in athletics, and being able to motivate people to do their very best, to get involved, to get to reach a goal that your group might want to be doing, and having that trust along the way as a leader is going to be really important too. So the next one sounds really a lot like the career development one, but this is a little bit different. So knowing work environments differ greatly, understanding and demonstrating effective work habits and active interest in the larger community and the workplace. So this is your chance to do what's right in situations, to make more adult choices. So a lot of times my students call it adulting, which I'm not really sure that's a word, but anyway, to be able to walk into a room and shake somebody's hand and look them in the eye and talk to them and network with them and include them, all of that is part of that professionalism piece. Being able to sit down and have a meal and know what fork to use, and how to have a conversation that's appropriate during a mealtime. All of that goes into professionalism. There's so many pieces to it. Being able to communicate in a way that's professional and not childish or quirky or anything like that is all that kind of professionalism that you should be working on now, and I know many of you are, you wouldn't be here today. But all of that goes into kind of building towards being a professional. So on the day that you go to interview with somebody, you're comfortable walking across the room and shaking their hands, or in COVID, fist bumping, or waving them off, or whatever people are doing during COVID. But being able to have a conversation with people that makes sense and sounds like something that where your confidence is coming out, that sort of thing. All of that's part of being professional. It also has to do with how you handle any kind of task that's in front of you. So being able to prioritize tasks, to complete those tasks, to ask for help when you don't know what the right thing to do, to be able to pay attention to detail. I know that many of our students, when they get ready to send off a cover letter or a resume or a personal statement for graduate school, they'll send it to me just to have me check for typos. That's fantastic, and you should always have somebody in your life that's kind of you're able to say, hey, can you check for typos? Because when you look at something too many times, right, you kind of overlook things because you know what you meant to say. So when you're first starting out, it's good to have somebody kind of stand in your corner and able to do that for you, because that's going to be important too. And then, just respect and dedication, showing up on time, doing a good job, all that goes into the whole professionalism piece. If at any point you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask too. Just shout it out. Okay, so teamwork. We talked about working in groups and how important that is, but I would say teamwork is probably number 3 for employers as far as importance goes. A few years ago, one of my daughters is an engineer, and she was just getting out of college, and she was going for her first interview, and she contacted me and she said, Mom, what if they asked me something from sophomore year engineering, like my materials class that I had, and I don't remember that stuff without referring to a manual or something. What if they asked me that in an interview? How am I supposed to remember all that? I said, you know what, I bet they're going to ask you about teamwork. They're going to ask you about how you work with groups, what your management style is. They're going to ask you questions like that. She kind of didn't believe me. I had her go on Glassdoor. How many of you are familiar with Glassdoor? You need to get familiar with Glassdoor. We are a handshake campus for sure, and many of you are also handshake campuses. That's where employers go to post jobs and internships, that sort of thing. But I always tell students, use a menu of different sites like that when you start looking for jobs and internships. But Glassdoor has this little special feature where people can go in and list the questions that companies ask them. And some companies actually go in and fill that in. So I told my daughter, I said, why don't you go to Glassdoor and just see if your company that you're applying to, if anybody's interviewed with them recently and if they listed the questions. And sure enough, the week before, somebody had interviewed for the exact job she was interviewing for, and they listed all of the questions, and none of them had to do with specifics of engineering. It all had to do with how do you work with teams, you know, what's your style when you're in a group, all of those kind of questions, because that's, they know you know the engineering. If you graduate, they know you know that. Just like any other major, that you know, if you get to this level, you're going to know it. But the piece that's missing, the hardest piece, is they can't really teach you teamwork if you haven't learned it up to that point. So they need you to know how to work in that group, how to do that sort of thing. Which, by the way, she got the job, so. You know, when you're part of that team, once again, those listening skills come into play. Being able to handle any kind of conflict would come into play. Often, one of the questions that people get asked in interviews has to do with how do you handle conflict, or tell me about a time when you had a conflict that you had to deal with, and how did you handle that? How did you solve that issue? And so being able to talk about that, working in groups on campuses obviously helps you answer that question. But really thinking in terms of, this is problem solving, and how do I handle conflict, and what can I do about that? And how can I include people in a group, maybe that are really different than I am. Some of the other things would just be being able to just collaborate, come up with common goals, and work towards those goals together. So that would be important too. And obviously, any kind of group that you work with, you really want it to be positive. You don't want it just to be like, oh, this is drudgery and I hate it, and this group, oh my gosh, I have to work with that person again. So you want to find a way to be positive in that. And so that's got to come out too when you're talking to employers and you're talking to graduate programs and all that, and they start asking you teamwork type questions. These are some of the things that you're going to want to talk about for sure. Next one, technology. You guys take this one for granted more than probably any other one. Maybe critical thinking is the other one that you take really, really for granted. But technology, you guys just assume everybody knows what I know, technology-wise. You don't realize how many employers, how many people in the hiring position, like me, we may not learn that technology, but we're going to hire somebody who knows that technology. So if I can't see on your resume, if I can't hear it in your personal statement, if I can't hear it in the interview, that you know different kinds of technology, I'm going to assume that you're on the same page I am, that you don't know all this. So don't take it for granted. Make sure that you're able to talk about the technology that you use all the time, even if you think that, oh, everybody knows this, and that you make sure that you demonstrate that in some way through what you submit when you're applying for a job, or when you're writing a cover letter or a resume or a personal statement, that you talk about that kind of technology piece. It's appropriate for what you're applying for. And really, any job these days, I can tell you technology is going to be important. Okay. All right. So, the whole job search process, the whole application process to get a job or to get into a graduate program, this is the perfect place to maybe use, isn't the right word, the competencies, but to be able to express them, to be able to talk about them. And the more you use those exact terms, like the more you say teamwork, the more times that you talk about critical thinking, the more that's going to resonate with the employer, with the job, with the graduate program or professional school. So in an interview, this is the time when they ask you, like, what are your strengths? You're going to talk about the competencies. When they ask you about maybe what are some of your weaknesses, how many know how to answer that question when they ask you about it? How many have ever heard how to answer that? Okay, I'm not going to ask you to tell us, but I will tell you. that when they ask you a weakness, don't use something that's canned. Don't say, oh, I'm a perfectionist. Everybody says that, right? You've ever heard that before? People use that for a weakness. Choose a real weakness for you. Now, if you're planning on being a teacher and your weakness is you can't stand kids, you probably want to choose a different weakness. But choose one that has made you a better person. So, my weakness, if I got asked that in an interview, I would say that I have a really hard time saying no. So if somebody asks me to do a program and I've got 6 other programs going on at the same time, I'm just going to say yes every time. But if I just said that and I left it alone, they would be like, oh man, she's going to get overwhelmed, she's going to get resentful, all that. So follow that then with what is a strength for you. And so that would be the time that you're going to say, and because I can't say no, I've had to learn to prioritize, organize, all of those other things. And when you can use those competencies as part of it, develop my listening skills, develop my communication skills, all those kind of things that come and are part of it, it's going to be that much stronger. So interviews, absolutely. Those competencies are going to come rolling out of your mouth, right? And anywhere along that job process, whether it's writing a cover letter, which I think a lot of students these days think that cover letters just don't exist anymore, because a lot of times when you're applying online. And they'll say upload your resume, but they may not say cover letter too. Always include a cover letter if you can. Include a cover letter. And sometimes they'll just let you upload one document. Just make that part of your one document. It's not saying one page, it's saying one document. So you can have your cover letter and your resume right there together, but your cover letter is your opportunity to put a bunch of this terminology into something that an employer is going to see right away. And usually they read the letter before they read your resume. So your resume is going to get about 6 seconds the first time it's looked at, whether it's a job or whether it's grad school or anything. 6 seconds. And then you're going to go into a pile. Either I'm going to read more about this later, or nope, out the door. So you want to make sure that you've got some of these competencies built into that cover letter and then into your resume as well. Okay. And then the other thing is when you're developing those professional contacts, like through networking and everything, in all of your emails, in all of your phone calls, all that sort of thing, this is the time to be able to use some of these competencies and really talk about them. And our next thing that we're going to talk about is personal statements. And I'm going to kind of explain what personal statements is, but and just be thinking, this is where I'm going to include as many of those competencies, because graduate schools are employers. Graduate schools are not just looking for people who are going to be filling seats. They're looking for people who are going to interact, and that's going to be really important. They're going to think of you just like any other employee, really. So, what is a personal statement? How many of you guys have ever written a personal statement? Okay, so probably have a few seniors mostly that have written personal statements. They're usually used for graduate or professional programs. And by professional programs, I mean like law school, med school, dental school, pharmacy school, all that sort of thing. It usually is something that's part of the application process. It might be something that you attach to your application. It might be something that you upload separately. But sometimes it comes to the school directly, and sometimes it goes to some kind of central application processor. So that's mostly when you're talking about like med schools and pharmacy schools and dental schools and law schools and that sort of thing. All those professional schools tend to have DPT, any of those, tend to have that central processor, so you can apply to a bunch of different places through one application process. And so I'll be talking about personal statements in 2 different ways because of those 2 differences, whether it's going directly to the school or whether it's going to a central application process. Okay, so if it is a general personal statement that they're looking for, so if they say just generally, we want a personal statement. They don't give you any instructions about it, or they don't give you any points they want you to cover. They don't talk about any terminology they want you to use or anything like that. that allows you that maximum freedom. That's your opportunity to kind of handle it the way that you want to write and what you want to write to. So you could submit that in a lot of different ways, and we'll talk a little bit more specifically about that in just a second. But it's something that you can tailor towards generally that field that you're going into. So if you're going through a central application process, this is something that can be like very, very general. Generally, you get the really specific questions when you're applying directly to a school and they want to know something very, very specific about you. So that general one is kind of that wide open. You can talk about this, why you want to be in this field in any way possible. And then there are many other schools that will ask you to kind of answer to a prompt. They'll give you a prompt and say, answer this, and generally for both of them, they'll give you like a certain number of words or characters. Make sure you know whether it's words or characters. A couple of years ago, I had somebody from the Lynchburg community contact me and say, hey, I'm applying to Virginia Tech for vet school, and I'm in a real pickle because I wrote my personal statement thinking that they were asking for a certain number of words. And it was like 4,200 words. That's a lot of words. And she said, now I realize it's characters. So I don't know how to pare this down. I've written this giant personal statement, and I've got to just pare this thing down. So she had told so many stories in this thing, and just cutting out stories. It was very personal for her because it's a personal statement, right? And she was having to cut out so much. So pay attention from the beginning to what the parameters are and how you're going to be able to do that. And I would say test upload and make sure that your computer count is the same as what they're counting. I know my own daughter, I have a daughter that's a pharmacist, and when she was applying to pharmacy school, the number of characters that her computer was telling her was different than what their system was. So she had to keep going back and cutting things to fit into theirs. So just know what the parameters are to begin with. Okay. So then, what do you need to ask yourself? And there's a lot that you need to ask yourself before you even start writing this thing. So what is special, unique, distinctive, or impressive about you or your life story? You need to stand out. And there is something special about everybody. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a mom and because I do what I do for a living. I truly believe that. There's something unique and special about you. There's something that you can do, or the way you think, or how you get involved that's different than everybody else. Maybe how you were raised even might be different than everybody else. What are the details of your life, personal, family problems, history, people or events that have shaped or influenced your goals? That the committee might kind of help them to understand who you are, and then once again, set you apart, right? When did you become interested in the field? And what have you learned about it and yourself? How have you gotten involved in it, all that sort of thing. How did you learn about this field? Did you learn about through classes? Did you do a reading that you did? Was it a seminar or some kind of experience, like an internship or something like that? Or did you have conversations with people in this field? So these are all things you kind of need to start asking yourself. If you have worked a lot while you're in college, maybe you had a job outside of campus or on campus, and maybe you did an internship or something like that, or some kind of research. How did that kind of develop your leadership skills and your goals? What are your career goals? You need to be able to say clearly, if I'm going to get into this program, this is how I'm going to use it. So you need to be able to know what your career goals are and identify those. This is kind of a tough one for some people. Are there any gaps or discrepancies in your academic record that you should explain? So often this happens when a student comes in and they're maybe majoring in one thing, and then they realize, you know, I really don't like this, and I'm not making great grades in this, and I need to like change majors. So then all of a sudden you get to a new major that you absolutely love, and your grades go up and everything's hunky-dory. But meanwhile, maybe your overall GPA has been affected by these first few classes that you took. That's your opportunity somewhere in that personal statement to address what I call the elephant in the room, and talk about the fact that you were heading this one path, decided that was not the path for you, and then why did you change to this other path, and look at the impact it's had on your grades, on your life, everything. Maybe your scores. These days, not as many places are asking you for like LSATs or GREs or anything like that, but if you took them and the scores were not what you wanted them to be, then this is your opportunity to talk about that as well. Maybe you have just always been a bad test taker. How many people would identify themselves, if you don't mind, as a bad test taker? Yeah. A lot of honor students tell me that they're terrible test takers, but they make phenomenal grades. Happens all the time. Have you had to overcome something that was a huge obstacle in your life, and how did you do it? And it can be anything. It can be something with your family. It can be something physical. How did you get past that? And I will tell you here that when you're thinking of these things that are super personal to you, and of course this is a personal statement, so there's got to be a little bit of personal in here, you don't want it to be anything that a committee might assume is still an issue in your life, still something that you haven't gotten past or haven't had to learn to work around. That might be a problem for you completing a graduate program. Because just to tell you how graduate programs kind of work, you know, they tend to invite a certain number of people to be in a particular class. Those people, in many kinds of graduate programs, especially professional programs, move through those years in that program together. So if somebody drops out or somebody flunks out or something, that leaves a financial hole for that school. So when they're accepting people and they're looking at all of this, they're not just thinking, is this person going to be, an okay student, and are they going to be able to fill a seat that first year? They're thinking about the whole time you're there, and are you going to drop out at any point and leave that financial hole for the school? So they're looking at a lot of things. Okay. What kind of personal characteristics do you have that once again are going to set you apart, show that you're going to be successful, that you can be professional, and then what are some ways that you have demonstrated that you have these? So if you say that you're a great leader, don't just say you're a great leader, give an example of that. Like in all my classes, I tend to be the one that people turn to and ask questions, or when we get broken into groups, I'm the one that people tend to choose to be the leader, and I gladly accept that. So what are some of those skills that you have? What are some of those abilities? And once again, this is where some of those competencies will show up in your personal statement. This is your opportunity to talk about, being able to critically think and communicate and lead and all of those things. What makes you a stronger candidate, more successful, more effective than other applicants? So once again, how do you stand out? How is that going to, really make you effective in their program? What are the most compelling reasons you can give for admissions committee to be interested in you? So part of that will be, how do you plan on using this program in your life? So if you are just like afraid to go out in the real world and you decide that, okay, I'm a senior, so now I'm going to just stay in school and go to grad school, I don't really know what I want to do yet, bad choice. And committees can see right through that. So that's the wrong reason to go to grad school, and they will see that in your personal statement. If they don't feel like you have a reason to be in their program that's going to affect your career choices down the road, they're going to move away from that. Okay, so then some general advice. Answer the questions if they have questions as appropriate. Tell a story. Don't make it typical. Everybody always says for med school, when I was little, somebody was sick, and I observed the doctors and nurses and knew that that's what I always wanted to do. Everybody says that. Well, what was it about that experience that really got to the heart of who you are? Tell that story a little bit deeper. Tell, how it really, really affected you. Be very specific about some of that. If you say you think you'd be a great doctor, back it up. Say how you know that. And hopefully you've had experiences like here on this campus, we have like an EMT squad. So a lot of our pre-medical people will join that EMT squad, and so maybe they've seen some things, maybe they've experienced some things, and they handled them really well. Like if there was blood in the room, I probably would be the last person in there. But these, you know, if you've been an EMT and you know you can handle that, you're okay then. Find an angle. How many of you have ever listened to a country song and you know what the hook is? Do you know what the hook is? Okay, so like right before they sing the little phrase in the middle or whatever, they always have this like hook, and it comes back to the same little thing in the middle that they always say. So everybody has some kind of angle. Everybody has some little hook, and that may be like what your greatest strength is. It may be that, you know, one of those competencies. It may be something else that's really, you know, special about you that you think is going to make a difference. Tell them what you know. Tell them your experience in the field. Who in their program is doing what you find the most interesting. So if you're writing, and this doesn't work for the ones that you're writing to like a central processing center, but if you're writing a personal statement for a particular program, you need to be in that program on the web. You need to know who the professors are. You need to know what they have published, and all this is on the web. And you need to connect with somebody on there. Now, you may not have to physically connect, but many of our students often do. They'll email them and say, you know, I was really interested in this piece that you wrote. This is what I really want to do. You know, if I'm going to be in your area, I'd really like to sit down and meet with you, talk about it. That's great, because often that leads to a GA or a TA position when you do that. But you need to be able to speak to who in that program could you see being your mentor. So once again, this doesn't work if it's a central processing, right? Because there are too many different schools. You're not addressing it to one particular school. But if it's a case where you're addressing something to a particular school, you need to make sure that there's a mentor who's teaching the stuff that you're really interested in. And mention them by name and mention what they do. All of that's going to be really important. Don't include any kind of religion, politics, and don't talk about mom and dad. So, yeah, you might say that you had a parent that was ill when you were little. You might say that you grew up in a family of doctors or nurses or people in the medical field or lawyers or whatever. That's okay. But what you don't want to talk about is mom and dad, mom and dad, mom and dad. Like, my mom told me this, my dad told me that. I hear it in interviews all the time. I see it in personal statements. I even see it in cover letters. You don't need to mention them. It just makes you sound unprofessional. It makes you sound really young. So try to stay away from that. Go to more generalities. I know people that da-da-da. I grew up around people that da-da-da. You don't need to talk about, like, this, my mother does this for a living or whatever. Do your homework. Know the programs that you're applying for. I can't tell you how many times I've read a personal statement that was going to go to one particular school, and it was obvious that that person was just writing kind of generally what they thought that program was about, and it may not have been about that at all. Or they were talking about opportunities that they would like to have that that school didn't have at all. Okay, so then write well and correctly. Avoid cliches. And then pick only a couple of people to read that. The worst thing you can do is have 10 people read your personal statement or your resume or your cover letter. Pick a couple of people that you really trust to be able to identify typos, to be able to be honest with you and say, this doesn't sound like you, or this really sounds kind of wishy-washy. Pick a couple, because if you pick 10, you will get 10 different opinions and you will get confused. So don't go that direction. Just pick a couple of people that you really, really trust, or that you feel should know something about the field that you're applying for, and ask them to read over your materials. Always get your materials read over by at least one person, though. Any questions about that? Often have people go like, oh my God, I had all my advisors read this, and everybody else that I know. Okay, so if you want more information about the NACE competencies, you can go to naceweb.org, and they have all the things about career readiness competencies on that site. If you're a student here and you want to make an appointment with me, my office is literally in the penthouse suite of this building. And please, email me, stop by, come by. If any of the rest of you have any trouble identifying who at your schools are the career directors and who the people you are to be talking to, ask me. I know all of them. We meet regularly across the state, and we all compare notes, and we all talk to employers about what they want, and we talk to graduate programs about what they're looking for, and that's how we know this stuff. So yeah, if you have any questions about who you need to talk to at your campus, you can ask me, or you can just probably look on your webpage. It's probably right there. The other thing is don't delete every email that comes across your desk from a career center. There's a lot of good information in what we send out, and there are a lot of great opportunities on campuses. So please take advantage of that while you're here. Not every school does what we do. We serve you for the rest of your life. So when you're 90, if you decide you want a new career and you don't know what that is, you can come back and maybe see me. I'll be 100 and something by then. But don't hesitate to contact those people that can help you and know these fields. So thank you for your attention today. Does anybody have any questions before we go on? No? Okay, I think you guys get to go to lunch now. So, yay. Most important thing of the day. All right, thanks.